So we've talked about a lot of different things here with diets. Let me kind of take you to a different place. I'll go to dinner with friends and we'll sit there and we'll talk. And they'll say, I follow this diet, I follow that diet. And then the wives will typically start with what we all ought to do. And then the guys will gladly debate any topic just to debate because we have nothing better to do than debate and see who's right and who's wrong. And then you kind of see, well, no, that's not how I do it. You first have to do the right way and first get the blood. And then after you take your blood, and then when the blood is going to tell you what kind of food you should eat because it's different for A and O and B and C and D and all this technical stuff. And I'm just sitting there saying, oh, this is so complex. And then you look at families and tell me what you've seen here with 20,000 people that have come to you. Most people take up the religion that their parents had. If your parents are Jewish, you're probably Jewish. If your parents are Christian, you're Christian. If your parents are Republican, you'll typically end up being a Republican. If they're Democrats, you'll be Democrat. Every once in a while, you'll see somebody says, you know what? I don't know if I believe in the person you believe in. I'm going to go do my own research, and then I become something else. I don't know if I believe in being a Democrat. I want to be a Republican. I want to be a Democrat or whatever it may be, right? But do you see similar trends with that being with how we eat based on how our parents ate? And how often you see that cycle being broken and what causes for that to happen?
Yeah, it's worse than that. It's not only what we've been taught, but diet is a hugely important cultural phenomena. And so if you decide to step outside the norm on diet, it's very disturbing to people. Many of them are well-intentioned, misguided people that are genuinely concerned for your well-being. They think if you don't adopt the diet that they adopted, you're going to be, it'll compromise your health and traditions. I had that experience myself. When I adopted this at 16, my mother was very concerned. I had adopted this, whole plant food diet. And my uncle, who was a physician, actually was invited over. I remember because it was my 16th birthday, and she wanted him to talk some sense into me. And he said, don't worry, Phil, these kids go through various diet fads and stuff. And as long as he eats plenty of gefilte fish, and, he'll be fine. And I explained to my uncle, I said, no, Uncle, it's called being a vegan and, no animal foods at all. He said, it's called being a Meshuggah. You'll stop it right this minute. Anyway, it's also, I decided at that point what career I wanted to pursue. I wanted to get into this alternative medicine. So I told the family I decided on my career choice, and he was really upset. He was screaming and yelling. I thought I was going to witness my first stroke. He said, nobody in this family would go to that kind of a doctor, let alone become that kind of a doctor. He says, better you should be a communist spy. And he's screaming and yelling. And finally, they get rid of him. He goes away. My dad, who's a really serious guy, takes me aside. He says, son, I don't know anything about this alternative medicine business, he says. But anything that makes him that angry and mad, it can't be bad. So you stick to your guns and good luck to you. My father, later, when I was in school, I was just coming out of school, began to have transient ischemic attacks. He had lived a conventional diet, the traditional foods. Was having essentially mini strokes, had lost his cognitive capacity where he couldn't remember his grandkids' names. He had to retire from teaching. He was a mess. Comes into the center. We had just started up, undergoes 26 days of fasting, recovers his health. To make a long story short, 20 years later, he helped edit The Pleasure Trap because he had made such a fabulous recovery. So he ended up being a really fabulous outcome in terms of, doing much, much better as a consequence of dietary change and remained compliant. Interestingly enough, my uncle, who, when I'm in school and we're doing this original work on blood pressure, I'm trying to get him interested in looking at our data. He won't look at our data. I says, Uncle, there's the blood pressure. They're getting well. He says, they're not getting well. I said, they're getting well. He says, no, they're not getting well. He says, I've been in practice 50 years. They never get well. I said, no, they're getting well. He says, you don't know how to take blood pressure. Okay. So anyway, he says he won't look at our data until it's published in a peer-reviewed journal. 2 months before our article finally comes out, we get it accepted for publication. 2 months before, he dies of a massive heart attack.
Come on.
My mother swore to the day she died, he died just so he wouldn't have to admit he was wrong. I think it was the Kugel, the Kreplech, the Knishes, but who knows?
Did he die April of 01? What month did he die? Because the paper is June of 01, right? When he came out. Is that the time? Wow. Unbelievable when you think about it.
He never did review the data because,
I'm sure he didn't. I mean, they don't have that kind of stuff up there.
Yeah,
depends on where he went. But there's
no question. This dietary, when you step outside the dietary norm, you're going to raise some concerns. And in fact, you have to be very careful not to become a social outcast because you're not participating in all the traditional habits. And learn, in our book, The Pleasure Trap, we talk about strategies for going along and getting along and not alienating people and not shoving your belief systems down their throat, but, accepting things as they are, and hopefully they respect you enough that they're willing to allow you the indulgence of adopting a health promoting diet and lifestyle.